you want me to open the data loader?
You just want to log in, yeah.
It's this, yeah?
Mm-hmm. 1 second. How about now, Winnie? Can you hear me? That's weird. It says it's live on my end. Are you guys able to see? That's pretty gross.
I'm not getting it.
Can you just see if you can log into?
Does that mean it's one of us? Does that mean it's me?
Oh, Jessica. It's working.
It's probably me.
So it's working. I muted myself, Winnie, but I'm back now. Okay, cool.
On the phone?
No, she's just listening in on Google Hangouts. Awesome. So, thanks for making the time again. And then let me know what you guys think about what I suggested. I think some of you already accepted, but I think the 3 sessions have been good to go over reports and fields, and now loading the data, but we didn't get to touch on Journey Builder, which marketing is more helpful for marketing than anything else. And then we didn't touch on dashboards and Excel dashboards, like dashboards in Salesforce and Excel. So I said those are optional for you, Marika, if you want to join. This is stuff that you could build for community things later, but it's not like a huge priority for you to learn it right now. Cool. So today, just to not keep you guys over time, we're going to walk over the data loader. There's actually 2 different tools that we use to load data into Salesforce. So first of all, like maybe zooming out, why would you load data into Salesforce in the first place? Because it doesn't exist, and you want it to exist in Salesforce so that you can analyze it or create reports out of it, or just keep it as an FYI. One really good example of this is that was very tedious but useful in the end is NovoEd doesn't do a great job of keeping track of which URLs we've had in the past. So for example, if you go to like the past courses section, it's hard to figure out like what month you actually offered that course. So I created a field that says course URL, and now every single session in our Salesforce for every course that we've offered includes the NovoEd URL. That's something that is not going to come in to our system automatically, so we would have to load that in to the system. So that's just one example. And then obviously we update Winnie and Jess are familiar with this, but we update the contact data sometimes, for example, to make sure that the blog people are in our system. And then Marika has done this in the past where she tries to update the course information or contacts information. So this is somewhat of a refresher. I think it's fairly new for Jessica, but I think it'll be good practice. So commonly used tools. We have two different tools that we use for data loading. I'm actually going to start with the first one because it is the go-to in Salesforce. So it's really easy to use from a UX perspective. So when you log into Salesforce and go to Setup.
Are they Salesforce tools or third-party tools?
Data Wizard is native to Salesforce. Data Loader, I believe, is also native to Salesforce because you can download it from Salesforce, the platform itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then Data Loader IO is a third-party platform, which is why it costs money, which is why we don't use it. So starting with Data Wizard, because that is the most native tool to Salesforce, and it's like the most integrated with Salesforce and easiest to use, I think. This would just be in Setup, and then in this quick find here, you would type in the word wizard, and you'll see this come up as Data Import Wizard.
Which tab are you in the top toolbar?
It's in Setup, so it's next to my name. It's not a tab, actually.
Oh, up there.
Yep.
The top.
Yep. Whenever you click on Setup, this is like going back, like behind the stage, or like yeah, this is like behind the scenes in Salesforce stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is where most admin things lie. So I typed in wizard and then, but rather select the link, and then it'll bring you to this wizard. And when you do this wizard, you'll see this button that's in green that says Launch Wizard. And if you launch it, then you will see this section come up. And I'll keep this brief because I think you'll practice when you do the exercise in the middle. But on the left, you are selecting which object you want to update. So all of you guys should be fairly familiar with objects at this point. We have standard objects that are like accounts and contacts, and then we have our custom objects, which are this tab that says custom objects, and that would be all of the things that we built for within our Salesforce platform. So course sessions, course signups, courses itself, everything else. This is also where you go for Plus Acumen course stuff. So what you do is you select, let's say I want to update course signup data. So I select it. Once you select it, it's really slow. It usually isn't this slow. You select it, this box will populate with the options.
That's the object?
You'll see a checkbox that says the object. And then you'll see this box pop up that asks you what you want to do. The three options are really intuitive. Adding new records means that these are brand new to our database. We know they're brand new. We want to make them from scratch. Updating existing records means these records already exist, and I'm just updating like some information about them. So here's a scenario where it's different. Like you have a list of people that are your reporters, and you know your reporters never existed in the Salesforce database before. So you select Add New Records. Or you are updating Catalyst, and you know Catalyst already exists in Salesforce, so you're just updating their age or something.
What happens if it's a mix?
Great question. The third option that leads. Yes. So this is what's called an upsert, which sounds like a goofy word, but it's just like a mashed up word that means update and insert. So if it exists, update. If it doesn't exist, insert. So it's called an upsert. So this third that says add new and update existing, you'll see this reference in other places as upsert. And most of the time I use upsert because like it is mixed that rarely do I find myself doing an update or and adding new ones. So let's say I do an upsert. You're gonna have to be careful about what you use to update the existing records. When possible, I try to use their contact ID or the ID of whatever record it is. So every record has an ID in Salesforce, right? Like every contact has a unique ID. Every course sign up of the contact has a unique ID. Every individual email that they've received has a unique ID. So if you want to be absolutely clear that you're updating the right or using the right ID to look it up, then it's best to use Salesforce.com ID.
When would we not use it? Because every time I've done this with you, we've used it.
When would you not use it?
When would you use name?
Home email is a unique contact for, actually, yeah, in most of the cases, you would use a Salesforce.com ID. It depends on which object you're selecting. So if I go back and I select accounts and contacts, take another minute, but yeah, it's even slower because it's delayed on yours.
Mine's really blurry. Is yours blurry?
Mine's pretty blurry.
Okay.
Okay, so it finally came up for me. But so if you do account and contacts and you select update existing, now you're going to see that there's slightly different options. So remember for course sign up, we had name and ID because those are the two identifiers that we have put in course signups. But contacts have different identifiers. Contacts also have an identifier called email, and contacts also have an identifier called external ID. Some of this stuff is stuff that I wasn't around. Like this is stuff that our architect put together, so I didn't really have a say in what we use as identifiers. But to Marika's question of when might I not use the Salesforce ID, when I'm doing quick updates, and it's on the contact level, sometimes I just use their external ID because that's a unique ID. So I just use like their home email and I can update their data using their email.
External ID is
It's the
email
same
and
as,
our-
yeah, and external ID and home email are the same thing in our system. So that's one case where that happens. Cool, so yeah, so, and then this is kind of the trouble with Data Wizards. There's lots of steps along the way. So I won't go into all the detail now because each of you will be doing an upload and I can help you troubleshoot. But there's other options that you select. Most of the time, the default one is to leave it as none because as long as you're making sure that you match the contact by the right ID, then that's what you need. And then here, if you had a CSV file, which I didn't prepare one ahead of time, but let's say I just dragged in my CSV file, make sure to change the character code to UTF-8. Sure. Yeah. Oh wow, that is really blurry.
I was like,
can't even see.
My like eyesight is good, but it's
Uh,
not that good.
Yeah, so once you drag in the report, as a best practice, I always just keep it as UTF-8. Sometimes if you don't keep it like this, you'll get the weird, funny characters that show up in their names and stuff. So this is just something that I do. And then you would click next. Oh, it has a row limit. Meh. Give me 1 second.
Mhm.
You like that what?
We should use that room
We
for
should
our
always use that
team
one for team meetings.
meetings because
We
it's
don't all have to
actually
look in.
really clear in the camera. Like actually, it's just like there.
Yeah, and then we don't all have to each log in to Blue Jeans. We can just log in the one.
Looks like a beach house.
I
It
know.
looks really nice.
I'm like, is he in a summer home right now?
He totally is because it's like all white
And a little
and,
like wood, right?
wood.
Okay, sorry, Winnie. So I'm just gonna quickly do this. this data wizard is really slow, which is another reason not to use it sometimes, but I wanted to show you guys. Okay. I'm matching by the Salesforce ID, and I'm dragging the file here. Next, and then it will ask you to map. So mapping as a step basically is saying like, this is the row, this is the column that you have in your spreadsheet. Which field should I map it to in Salesforce? So here, because it's the course sign up, it's the ID, that's actually the salesforce.com ID. And here, the field is completed the course. And I think there's a completed the course field somewhere around here. Yeah,
Of course.
completed. Yeah, this is another reason why I don't really like using the wizard. Okay, well, I'm gonna use this for now.
I think you can control F.
Work on this thing.
Oh,
Yep, and then you click next, and it will tell you what you'll map and what you'll input, and then you can just click start input. So I won't go through the steps there. But
sorry,
that,
can you go back please, for a second?
Yep.
Because mapping is always where I got stuck on this, and so I'm just going to ask a series of questions that you've probably answered before.
sure. What's up?
But with mapping, like this one looked very simple because there was just the two fields that were
Yes.
mapping. But a lot of the times I don't actually have, maybe it's just I don't have it memorized or whatnot, or just not sticky, but how do I know which field is mapped to Salesforce.com ID?
Salesforce.com ID is the field that has the ID of the record that you're trying to update.
So
So-
in this case, what you just showed us is it was going to course signups.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're
Yep.
updating is
Yeah.
course signup informations.
Exactly. So
And if we were updating contact information,
it would be the contact
it would
ID.
be the contact ID.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And then if you were updating email, it would be the email ID. So Salesforce.com ID is just
Okay.
whatever is the ID of that individual record that you're trying to update.
Yeah.
I think I kind of get that.
It's like a conceptually kind of get it, and then when I'm in there, I still always get a little bit like
Sure. So
nervous.
like think of it as
that I'm mapping wrong.
think of it as you are in charge of a big database of people's like driver's licenses, and you're trying to update 10 of them. And you go into this library. What you're trying to do is pull out using their ID on their driver's license of the people that you want to update.
So I'm looking them up by their like in DL
Individual-
number, not
Yeah,
name or social or anything like that.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. You're not, and then it's not, and then if you were trying to update their car information, you would go and look for their car ID
Their
and
car
not their
registration.
contact ID.
I see.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's very helpful.
Cool. So thanks for that question. So sorry, this is, I figured this training would take a while because there's just a lot of little steps. So I'm actually going to move on because I will help you guys troubleshoot the little steps as you're working on the individual uploads. So that's the data wizard in a nutshell. The other one that I had you download is the data loader. And this is basically what I use every day for any updates. So when it launches, again, you have insert, update, and upsert. So when you click upsert or any of the buttons, it's going to have you log in. You'll leave it as authorization, production. The difference between production and sandbox, very simply, is that sandbox is an environment that doesn't affect our actual database. So I use sandbox when I'm trying to test new processes. Like, for example, with Plus Acumen Core, if I don't want to change the data right away, I just want to test it, then maybe I'll switch to sandbox. But you will log in, and then it will prompt you for your Salesforce information. And you can click allow, and then after a moment, it should allow you to go.
Does it matter
Next.
whose ID we use to do this?
No, it doesn't
upload?
matter.
Can be Joanne or yours.
Yep, it can be anyone's. We all have admin access. So here, the same thing that you saw in the wizard, it's going to ask you what object you want to select. Here's the difference, and which is the downside of this. The data loader the great thing about it is that it can update millions of records. It's huge. Whereas the data wizard that I just showed you can only update 50,000 rows at a time. 50,000 rows sounds like a lot, but we have 350,000 signups. So if you ever work with a big sheet, then I tend to use Data Loader, which is this tool that we're looking at. But the downside is that rather than updating accounts and contacts in the same go, you have to do accounts first and then contacts.
Oh, this was the original way.
Yeah.
Sylvia had you updating.
Actually, Sylvia had me using Data Loader, but that's another conversation. That was, yeah,
Wait,
a
is it
bad
just
choice.
data loader?
Data Loader IO, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, doing the same thing, I would select course sign up. And here I can, I think I can drag it in. Let's see. I don't remember if I can or not. Okay, I can't drag it in. You would select which file you want to upload. And then click next, and it will say initializing. It'll tell you how many records there are. It'll ask you for the ID field, and then you can ignore this contact field because we're just updating course signups. This part is also the mapping part. Choose an existing mapping means that you saved this mapping before and you want to just like use it again. Usually we just create a new one. There's a really handy tool that says auto match, which doesn't work for this, but sometimes when if you do it right, your column headers match the column headers that match the names that we've put into Salesforce for the fields. So when you hit auto match, it'll actually just automatically pull it in. In this case, most of the time what you'll do is you'll just take and drag and drop the ID in. And then you can just, same thing, drop it in here. And then once you've mapped each of these, you can click OK and click.
You kind of like have to map it a second time.
Hold on, wait, is this different mapping? Okay, why is that one just called ID? On the other one, it was called Salesforce ID. Is that the same thing?
It's the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, the tools call it different things, but this is the same thing.
Got it.
Yep.
Mapping is the part that I'm always like
Yeah.
nervous about, because if you F it up, like
That's when
it's
you
kind
get
of
the
a
wrong
big deal,
data.
right?
Yep.
So
This is a little confusing, but okay.
Yeah. I think the practice will come when you guys do it on your own. So it'll ask you where you want to save your success and error files. The thing with Data Loader is every time you do any type of update, it'll give you a report that tells you which of the records successfully uploaded and which of the records did not work. So you just tell it where you want to save it, and then let's just click finish. So it says you have 314 successful updates and 0 errors. So if you look on your computer, it's going to give you like these two files that you can open. And it says item updated. If there's an error, it'll say like error, something, something. Cool. I know there's probably a lot of questions, but I think getting into the practice part will be helpful. Okay, so I'm not going to go over Data Loader just because of time reasons. Just know that it's out there. It's beautiful. Like the interface is great, but if we wanted to use it, we'd have to pay for it, which is why we don't use it. But yeah, there's other tools out there is basically my point. So the thought process, again, very similar to everything else we've done. First thing you ask yourself is, can I clone something and save myself the effort? And I've tried to start some templates that we can use for different things, and we can probably keep adding to these. But for example, for Plus Acumen Court, I created a template. For all of our blog updates, I created a template, and for course sessions. The second question you ask is to Marika's point of what do I update? You ask yourself, what object is this on? So is this course sign-up data that I'm updating, or contacts, or is it email results? That's the key question. And then most of the time you'll be using Data Loader because it doesn't have a row limit. Obviously, after you decide on the object, you need to make sure that the fields exist. Why would this be important? Let's, for example, say you're preparing a spreadsheet that tells me the age. And in the age, we have a pick list of ages that we can use, like 30 to 40, 40 to 50, or whatever. But in your data, you write 35, which is not part of the pick list. You can upload that data, but you're going to be uploading data that doesn't match the field in Salesforce. So make sure that the field exists and make sure that the data match the fields that you created. Obviously, for like open text fields, you don't have to worry about that, but I would just check the pick list to make sure that you're not creating something that doesn't match what our structure is. And then the biggest thing about data upload is not the upload part itself, which is the confusing part because there's so many steps, but really, are you uploading clean data? And unfortunately, I can't really go into too much detail about this because every case is slightly different, but mainly what you're looking for here in the thought process is that the data should not have duplicates and to be very, very detail oriented, because even like an extra period might throw off your report. Like if your report is reporting on Catalyst and chapter leader, and then you put something like former chapter leader, well, that doesn't fit the rest of the data. So when you report on it, it's actually not going to include that data. So that's, yeah, it's a step that's a very big step that is just kind of summarized as check for data integrity. The question that just asked, is this an update, insert, or upsert? So that's something that you'll have to choose before you do the steps. And then once you do the upload, one best practice is just to make sure that you're checking to make that something did not go wrong. If there's errors, that's when you want to address them. And if you have you want to go back to the spreadsheet basically and take a look at the data that you just try to modify and check 2 or 3 rows. So I would like take this ID and go to Salesforce, paste the ID at the end here, because every ID, if you paste the ID after the salesforce.com URL, that will bring up that record. Just go and check at least 3 or 4 of these to make sure that like, oh, I just tried to update this and it looks correct, etc. That's basically the thought process in a nutshell. And then just to keep it simple for everybody else on the team, if you happen to use something that is a process that you'll replicate over time, like if you're, I don't know, like let's say in the future, you on a quarterly basis update our community data, you probably want to make this into a template that you can use in the future and also include like notes on how you make these updates. So that's what I mean by creating a template. Cool. So any questions for now before I move into the practice part?
No.
Nope. Okay. So I wasn't sure how much time we would get. So I put it again as easy and level up. Level up meaning if we don't finish it, we can take it home as homework. And then we can individually check in on it. But I think for the most part, the first part is to prepare the template because that is the bulk of the work. So Winnie, I gave you the hardest one because I gave you the one that involves pivot tables and VLOOKUPs. So I will actually maybe sneak out and like walk you through it in a little bit more detail. But yeah, each of you have an assignment here. For Winnie, the goal is to update the completion count field. So every single contact has on the contact object a field that tells me how many courses they've completed. Sometimes it's 0 because they haven't completed any. In order to update this, it's not automatic right now. What you have to do is export the data and then basically do a VLOOKUP or do a pivot table to make sure that you get a count of how many signups they've actually or courses they've actually completed. And then you're doing an upload to update this number. So it's just one contact ID and one completion count field, but it's the template that takes the most amount of time. For Jessica, I think we talked a little bit about this, but I think you can start thinking about what's a template that you can use for honor roll students.
Mm-hmm.
And then backtracking, the question that you'll be asking yourself is, do these fields exist? And if they don't exist, you have to create them first.
Mm-hmm.
And then my hint for you is we already have something that we use for the contacts, for uploading blog contacts.
Mm-hmm.
So take a look at that. And then for Marika, it's preparing a template to update the catalyst and chapter leader fields. Same hint as Jessica to look at the blog template. And also to look at the chapter leader fields pick lists. So just to explain what these resources are that I'm sharing with you guys, this Salesforce template guide is a step-by-step instruction for how to use the templates. And this Dropbox folder is where I actually keep the templates that you download as an Excel file. So you would download the template first and then refer to this Google Doc to understand the steps. Does that help?
Where this is that Google Doc Salesforce templates?
So yeah, so you want to go to the Google Doc and then click on blog template. Ignore the first part, but this is starting with the second step is what you would want to go through. So this is an example of a template, but you'll be basically using this to customize it and change it for the honor roll students. And Marika, same for you. You want to start as step 2. Cool. I will be here if you guys have questions, but I'm going to leave you to it for the next 10 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes. The goal isn't to finish a template or to finish an upload. I think the goal is to go through, practice the thought process and tell me where you get stuck so we can troubleshoot together. I think you guys are all still working on this, but I just wanted to wrap up because we have to jump into our team meeting, and this is home.
meeting?
We have our. Oh my God!
Today's Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday. For some reason, I kept thinking we have to be done by 12 for our team meeting.
I do need to be done by 12.
Oh, okay. That's fine. So maybe I'll wrap up anyways because I wanted to go over some best practices and resources. But you can continue working on this, and I'll follow up with each of you to make sure that you feel comfortable and where else we might be able to do more practice. Winnie and I already have an hour booked for practice tomorrow. So if I go back to this training doc, one thing that's a little bit complicated is sometimes the field doesn't show up in the data wizard. So you probably won't have to access this, but just in case you don't see a field come up in the data wizard, there's a reason for that. And if you flag it to me, I can help update it so that it does show up when you need to update a field. Oftentimes what you run into is you might see error fields after you update the data. If you see the errors, one thing that I do for large sheets is sometimes I just take the rows that do not have errors and I delete them, and then I prepare basically a new file that just has the rows that supposedly have an error. And then I'll do the same exact upload again with this error file to see if it was due to like Salesforce processing it slowly and not doing it right the first time. And oftentimes what I see is the second time it might go through or it might come back with fewer errors than before. So that's one trick, is when you have a bad batch, basically to isolate it and prepare a file with that batch and try it again. And then Marika just reminded me for best practice that first and last name must be filled in for contacts. It's required. So if you ever have a sheet that you are updating to the contacts and you are, if you are updating the first and last name, you have to have them filled in. If you're not updating their first and last name, then you don't need this. Does that make sense? Like if you just have their contact ID and then a field that says if they're a catalyst and you don't have their first and last names, then you can ignore this. But if for whatever reason you're trying to change their first and last names, or you're trying to create new contacts with first and last names, then they have to have some information. They can't be left blank. And then resources wise, unfortunately, this data loading stuff is technical by nature, so all of the resources I could find are fairly technical. So I went through it, but you can ignore most of this and skip to page 13. Is it 13? Yeah. So there's pages that will actually have the step-by-step instructions as a reminder, but again, I'm expecting to like walk you guys through it during practice. A lot of people ask me about what the errors are, so this is a helpful resource that I go to look at what the errors are that are spitting out and why, and it tells you how to troubleshoot. And then I mentioned where the Dropbox templates and Salesforce templates are. I think for myself, one thing that I'm thinking actively about is how to prepare more templates for the new person that we bring on, because I don't want them to have to make too many judgment calls for data that we upload on a consistent basis. So you might see this get fleshed out more in the future with different types of templates. Cool. Any questions? I think next steps are please spend a little time working on this homework part, and I'll follow up individually with you guys on how it goes. Questions, thoughts? No?
I think I need to go through the whole process,
Yeah.
but I have to make my fields first.
Yeah, I think yours is a little bit more involved. What?
What's the password again?
Dial 1297 exclamation. Cancel.